right. Welcome, everybody. We're now going to call the July 22nd, 2019 Planning Commission meeting to order. The first thing on our agenda is approval of the minutes of the regular Planning Commission. It says meeting of April 22nd. I'm assuming it's the May 29th meetings, and that's a typo, or are we?
That's correct. It's the May 29th meeting that we're approving the minutes for. Thanks for catching that.
Okay. Thanks, Sean, for helping with that. All right. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the May 29th meeting?
So moved. Second.
All in favor say aye. Any discussion? We already said no. Okay, thank you. So the meeting minutes are approved. The next part of the Planning Commission is an opportunity for anybody in the room to address the commission on things that are not currently on the agenda. So if you have anything that you'd like to bring up right now that's not currently on the agenda, the public hearing and the opportunity for citizens to come up and do that is the time. Now is the time. So everybody in here wants to talk about things on the agenda. All right. Well, great. I guess we will close that. We don't need to make a motion to close that. I asked that the last time. Great. So the next thing is the approval of tonight's agenda. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. Right now, we're going to open up the public hearing to consider a request for variances to allow the addition of an attached garage at 2015 Forest Drive. So for those who'd like to get up and speak about this, after the staff, do we do the staff report first? We'll do the staff report, and then for those who'd like to get up and speak about that, you can come up and approach the podium. Make sure to say your name and then just write down your name before you start speaking. Thank you. Staff.
Thank you. The property at 2015 Forest Drive is located in the low-density single-family residential zoning district, or R1 district. The homeowner is proposing to construct an addition that includes a 2-car attached garage as well as second-story living space above. That proposal requires variances from the side setback requirement, the total number of allowable accessory storage buildings, and the total allowable square footage of accessory and garage space on the lot. The applicant is proposing a 2-car garage that would be approximately 25 feet wide and 852 square feet in area. That would include living space above the garage space and is part of a larger home remodel project. Single-family homes in the R1 district are required to be set back 10 feet from the side lot lines. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow a setback of 6.8 feet on the rear corner of the garage and 8.1 feet on the front corner. The layout of the property presents some challenges for adding an attached garage to the side of the existing house while meeting setback and accessory structure requirements in this zoning district. The house was built with a detached garage at the far rear of the property, requiring the house to be more centrally located on the lot to accommodate the current or existing driveway. Additionally, there are multiple properties in the vicinity that are also zoned R1 that do not meet the 10-foot setback requirement. And then just for comparison's sake, the proposed setback of 6.8 feet that they're asking for, that still exceeds the 5-foot setback requirement of the single family or R zoning district, which is the predominant residential zoning district in the city. The homeowners also proposed to convert the existing detached garage to a shed while maintaining their existing storage buildings on the lot. Code allows for no more than one detached garage, greenhouse, storage building, or gazebo. Converting the detached garage to a storage building would amount to 3 total accessory buildings on the lot, including their existing shed, and then they have a pool building as well. Code The proposed garage addition also increases the net square footage of all accessory structures on the property to 1,616 square feet. The zoning code limits accessory structures to an aggregate of 1,300 square feet. So that would exceed that by a little over 300 square feet. Code does allow lots that are 15,000 square feet and up in area to have accessory structures make up to 13% of the lot area, whereas this lot actually falls just short of that threshold at 14,673 square feet. If that 13% rule, if the lot was just slightly larger, if they were allowed to apply that 13% rule, it would actually allow accessory structures to total up to 1,900 square feet, which is above what they're proposing at 1,616. Staff finds it reasonable to allow the homeowner to maintain the existing structures while also adding the new attached garage. That is to say, we think it would be unreasonable to make them tear down their existing detached garage, which they plan to use as a shed. Staff also finds the orientation of the house on the lot and the existing accessory structures to be unique circumstances that warrant granting of these variances. Additionally, the proposed attached garage matches the architecture of the surrounding homes, and additionally, the existing driveway that goes to that current garage that's going to become a shed, that existing driveway on the property will be removed, which will reduce the overall impervious surface coverage on the lot. Finding that the proposal meets all requirements necessary to issue a variance, staff is recommending approval. And we have the applicant is the builder for the homeowner, and they're here to answer any questions, and staff will stand for any questions as well. Thank you.
Right, great. Well, let's open up the public hearing. Yep, come right up to the podium, say your name, and then write your name on the clipboard that's up there.
My name is Robbie Highland. I'm the builder for the owner. Where do you write your name?
We're going to grab the sign-in sheet. Looks like that was forgotten. Sorry about that.
No problem. Can I just keep talking then?
Sure. Yep.
So Matt did a pretty good job of explaining what we're doing. I don't have a ton more to add, so I might just ask questions regarding the variance application or any concerns you have.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess, and my question is as much, I guess, for staff as for you. I guess I'm just curious, the decision to do an attached garage that doesn't really fit within standard code versus just upgrading the existing detached garage. Can you explain why that is the choice to add that additional garage?
To achieve an attached garage.
Okay.
So right now, having a detached garage in Minnesota is challenging, and going through this large of an addition, it just makes sense to attach a garage, get a nice mud room, entering into the house. So that was the whole intent behind it all.
Okay.
So.
I'm also curious, you see that the driveway will be removed. Will the curb cut also be removed? Will it just be standard curb replacement?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for the builder? All right, thank you. Would anybody else like to get up and speak? All right, well, I think that we could probably close the public hearing if nobody has any other comments or commentary about this variance. Would somebody like to make a motion to close the hearing?
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Do we have any questions for staff or anything, or would somebody like to make a motion on the variance?
I just have a comment that I was really impressed with the applicant going to the neighbors and getting the support from the neighbors before coming to us. I think that was really nice to see.
Yeah, I agree. That makes it a little bit easier for us. All right, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. All right, it looks like the motion passes. So great, congratulations. Okay. All right. The next item we can move to on our agenda is an item regarding a public hearing to consider a request for conditional use permits to allow small wireless facilities at multiple locations throughout the city. So staff, could you kind of give us an update?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. AT&T is requesting approval of conditional use permits in order to allow the installation of small wireless facilities in several residential areas. The applicant is proposing to replace 5 city-owned light poles and 2 utility poles with new poles that will accommodate the attachment of these small wireless facilities. The poles are located in the right-of-way, but are adjacent to the following residential properties: 7044 Harriet Avenue, 7100 James, 6645 Thomas, 6845 Thomas, 7116/7108 Lindale. I will explain that in a minute. 7400 Nicollet, and 7444 Upton. These sites were identified by AT&T as areas where cellular coverage was lacking and where light poles, utility poles, or other structures that could feasibly hold small wireless facilities were present. The small wireless facilities are able to fill pockets of poor cellular coverage that signals from traditional towers cannot reach. For a little bit of background, in 2017, state laws were changed to allow wireless service providers the right to install facilities in the right-of-way. While the city's authority to deny permits is limited, cities can make the facilities a conditional use in single-family residential areas. The council did this in 2017. Conditional use permits in the R district are required to be consistent with the city's comp plan, its policies and goals, and also the zoning code. They must not negatively impact public health and safety or interfere with government facilities, utilities, or services. Radio frequency emissions are regulated by the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. Frequency studies have been conducted on all of the proposed sites in accordance with those regulations, and all sites were determined to be within the acceptable limits for the general public. Staff finds that the proposal meets the required conditions, and it's reasonable to allow small wireless facilities to be co-located with existing facilities in the right-of-way. I'm going to bring up a diagram just to talk briefly about 7116 Lindale Avenue. In your packet, this pole location is shown south of the driveway at 7116 Lindale Avenue. That's where the existing light pole is now. When Lindale Avenue is reconstructed, it's under construction right now, that pole will actually be moved to the north side of that driveway. Matt's gonna have our cameraman zoom in there a little bit. So the yellow, I know this diagram is gonna be hard to see. The yellow highlighted area is where the existing light pole is. That is where AT&T was originally proposing to install the new pole with the wireless facility. As Lindale is reconstructed, that light pole is going to be moved to the north side of the driveway, approximately on the property line between 7116 and 7108. So that's what's indicated on this drawing. AT&T is redoing their drawings. They will not be allowed to install a second pole next to the new pole on Lindale. They will have to coordinate with the Public Works project. So I just wanted to clarify that before we move forward. There is supposed to be a representative from AT&T here tonight. Yes, there is. There is a representative of AT&T here tonight to answer technical questions. Otherwise, staff will stand for questions as well.
Sure.
All right, Commissioner O'Leary.
Just to clarify on the Lindale question, the new pole, or the pole that will be installed that has the antenna equipment attached, is it an exact match to the other poles that will be used in those locations on Lindale, or does it look different?
No, it will be required to match the other poles on Lindale Avenue.
Okay, The ones on York and Edina do not match the existing ones, and it drives me a little bit crazy. So.
That will happen as part of the Public Works permitting process. This is a first step. Public Works will issue the final right-of-way permit before anything can be installed. And yes, they have assured me that it will match.
Okay, thank you.
Do we know if this will be a shared infrastructure, or is it will be exclusive for AT&T use?
The proposed small wireless facility is just for AT&T.
All right, well, thank you for that report. And let's open up the public hearing. As a reminder, when you walk up, just sign in, sign your name, and you got 3 minutes to go. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
My name is Diane Herrera. I live off of Thomas near one of the pole changes you're suggesting. Would you please define conditional to the use of these small wireless units throughout our city? Verizon is going to be bringing in 5G in the near future. Are they going to want to be taking our poles and requiring more changes? Who's paying for these poles and the upgrades now and in the future? Is AT&T going to pay for it? And in the future, as we move to self-driving cars and other technology, who's going to be paying for the utility change requirements as we move forward that way? And, excuse me, I guess thirdly, why are we just doing this for AT&T? Are Verizon and other organizations, are they already have these types of miniature devices installed? Or are we going to have more of this going on? If indeed Verizon and Sprint and everyone else is going to want to come in and install these little miniature towers, we're going to have a snowballing effect of more and more power lines and everything else needed to be moved. So I have a cost and a real severe utilization concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And staff, just to clarify, we will keep a list of the questions and then answer them all at the end. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kathleen, and I live on 65th and Stevens. So I'm not directly affected by the, but I do have some questions. It says co-locate. So I'm asking my fellow residents, because you represent me, to tell me what does that really mean. Co-locate to me means we're adding on. I wear a face mask because I'm legally disabled due to electromagnetic fields and multiple chemical sensitivity. I am exactly what this affects. And so I want to know where these are located. As my fellow resident said, are we going to continue to grow? 5G this is 5G for that lady's information. And 5G will be coming to us by Verizon, Comcast, Netflix, whoever, okay? But we don't, in this, okay, and I'm just going to get right to it because I don't have a whole lot of time here. Your executive summary says the laws were changed and we're going for FCC, as Melissa mentioned. We're making our decisions based on 1997 laws. The FCC, if you guys haven't read that 200-page document, I did, because it affects me, okay? I have a gauze meter, and I'm willing to share it with anybody in this room, and it actually tells you every time you turn on your cell phone what kind of electromagnetic fields you're getting hit by, okay? Right now, when I walk down 66, as we did that wonderful remodeling, I cannot walk on the south side of that street because of the fiber cabling on the ground. I can't walk on the east side of Nicollet or on the east side of Lindale. And we're talking about, I went to 2 of these locations that have nothing to do with me and my neighborhood, and the electromagnetic fields that exist there today put this thing off the rock. They exist. So I'm asking my planning commission, and I'll be asking my city council and anybody else that will listen to me to give me a warning sign. In this documentation, it says that they don't feel they have to give me a warning that says that this pole has a small cell unit on it. I believe we do, and we should. You know, the other thing that I noticed in the federal laws, or excuse me, state laws, is how much are they paying us? We don't talk about income here, okay? AT&T has to pay us something to put their stuff on our utility poles. So what is our income base to this? Did anybody do a cost analysis? I'm not as concerned as maintenance because I believe that AT&T will maintain. What I'm concerned about is adding on and adding on and adding on. I need to know, without taking my gauze meter with me everywhere I go, whether my city is bombarding me from above or bombarding me from below. We're hiding it, and it's not your fault, but we need to be educated. I don't want to slight my city in any way because I moved here 2 years ago, and in that small amount of time, we got boxes going up all over the city with mechanical stuff in it. I walked by with this. You guys, you would not believe what kind of electromagnetic fields are running through our city, under our sidewalks and over our heads, and we want to add more without telling us what we already have. I'm asking for what do we have and how much are we going to add.
I
Thank
totally
you.
appreciate that. Thank you.
I don't see the place to sign in. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just say your name and then sign in it.
I'm Debbie Gustafson, and I live at 1606 West 66th Street. And I've read just a little bit about 5G, and I have concerns. Because even though you speak of a small number of these little boxes at this time, I understand that to be efficient, they need to be at every 2 to 8 houses. And I've also read on a site called Radiation Health Risks that some studies have been done, but it's not enough to make decisions. And these studies do point to higher rates of cancer, skin conditions, things that I don't think we want for ourselves or our children. So thank you.
All right. Thank you.
My name is Matt Johnson. I live at 7601 First Avenue. I know there's a lot of back and forth about 5G, about health risks and what it affects.
Sir,
what it
sir,
not. Yeah.
could you speak into the microphone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry. I know there's a lot of back and forth about it. There's not a lot that's proven on either side, and I know for my wife, she also suffers from whatever is called electromagnetic sensitivity. She can't sleep if you have a cell phone or a wireless signal in the house. We have to turn our Wi-Fi off at night. We have to have our phones on airplane mode, and we have had to have our house checked with a Gauss meter. Putting these wireless towers up, they are like if you're near a current cell tower, there's safety concerns. If you're near a power substation, there's safety concerns. And yet we don't know, because it hasn't been studied enough, what the concerns are for being near these cell towers. And they do affect people. They may not affect everyone the same way, but they do affect people. And I just want to ask that you consider that maybe because it's not affecting you, but it's affecting somebody else, that you consider their health as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not sure about this. Okay, is that all right? My name's Susan Cron. I'm at 6439 Vincent, and I've done quite a bit of research on this subject. The 5G will increase the rate of intensity that it is going into your body by 5 times over 4G. And the other thing about 5G, you can't shut it off. It's not like you can put your phone in airplane mode. It's always in your house. You can't shut it off. You can't get away from it. So there's a lot of concerns about that. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, the other thing is, there's very large group of scientists around the world that have asked for a moratorium to study 5G before it is a rollout. I mean, there's scientists and doctors around the world that have signed, and I can give you the information if you want.
Hi, I'm Dr. Katie Eagle. I work in pediatrics, so this is a big deal because this is my population. As far as EMFs go, we know that childhood cancers are linked to cell phone tower proximity, leukemia, and brain tumors. Kids are more likely to have cancer. This is a really big deal, and I hope that people are really looking at the literature. There are actually studies that support the evidence of EMF sensitivity. People experience it, but it's really our kids that are going to be the test subjects with this new technology. So I hope everybody considers that.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Frank DiCristina. I actually live in Bloomington, a sister city. I am a certified building biologist. I spent almost 45 years in industrial, military, and consumer electronics. My main job was to take noise out of computer systems, satellite communication systems, various industrial computers used by the military, public service, meaning police cars, ambulances, etc. I can't give any more information than these people. These are the people that call me. I go in and I measure this stuff. I have the meters, I have the ability. I've been doing this, like I said, for almost 40 years. It is a problem. It is not well addressed in the United States. We know that in the European countries, they are of big concern, especially in Germany, Sweden, France. Even Russia acknowledges that there's an issue. The problem I see right now is we already have 5G in Minneapolis. They've set it up for the Final Four. They put it up a week before Final Four started. That's when they were supposed to start it. The phone has been ringing off the hook for me, for work, for people calling me up, asking me what's going on. We can't keep up. From my end, I can't keep up with the work. I can't keep up with what's happening to these people. All they know is they're sick. I've already seen 2 clients today. I drove all the way out of Winsted or something, out halfway to Hutchinson this morning. I rushed back to get here for this meeting. My poor client, she can't sleep. She's got headaches. I was running tests with her. Her skin is burning. This is something that needs to be looked at carefully, not just rubber stamped and pushed along. They're putting the towers up as fast as they can down Portland in Minneapolis. I saw it the other day. They can't get these towers up quick enough. I can't stop them. I'm small. I'm not political. I'm just a technician. If I see it, I can measure it. I can do something about it. I'd be happy to take any of you on a little tour, and we can go walk around. I have the meters, and I can show you what's going on. The fact that you have a tower next to this building right here scares me. You work here for a long time. If your health starts to go down, start thinking about what's going on. We're being tested, and there's not enough information out there in this country. If we go to Europe, there's tons of information. I thank the public for speaking up because you guys and gals can say it much better than I can.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else that would like to get up and speak? Okay.
I want to say that the World Health Organization does categorize this type of technology as a category 2B carcinogenic. So it is recognized. This isn't made up in people's heads. Too. So
Hi, my name's Elliot Wilcoxon. I live over at 1840 West 76th Street. My concern is mostly just what the rollout times are going to be on this technology, assuming that you guys approve it today. And then also how that'll affect what is considered like the rollout area for high-speed internet, be it fiber or this 5G technology. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have any other folks in the audience that would like to speak at the public hearing? All right, no. So, should I make a motion to close the public hearing? Does anybody like make a motion? Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, well, it sounds like there are a lot of questions. And my question before, I know we'll want to speak to the AT&T representative who's here today. And I just have a quick question for staff. I know that we had spoken earlier about if maybe there could be a little bit of clarification given to the folks here about what the state and federal policies are before it comes to the Planning Commission. Because I understand that this is this the first time it's come to the Planning Commission in terms of putting up 5G towers in Richfield, and kind of how that process looks overall.
Chair Hoberg, yes, this is the first application for this type of use in the city of Richfield. If it's okay with you, I did make a list of questions, and I was going to go through those kind of one by one, keeping the health questions for the end since it's the biggest question, but I can just tick off a couple of those other ones to start with, if that's okay with everybody. In terms of why we're doing this for AT&T, because AT&T applied. If Verizon applies, if the other T-Mobile applies, we will have to consider those applications in the same way that we are doing here. We're required to do that by law. If they apply, we consider. Yes, Commissioner Laban. Commissioner Laban, yes, the AT&T representatives have applied for these locations based on gaps in their service. Locations for gaps in service for Verizon could be different. Yes, they could apply for different locations throughout the community. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
A definition of co-locate. We've used the word co-locate to mean that these will be located on existing utilities. They will be co-located with existing utilities as opposed to installing poles that are specifically for wireless, which is another option. Installing poles that have nothing to do with the city's infrastructure are just specifically for this technology. That's why we've used the word co-locate. Who will pay for these? AT&T or the applicant will pay for these. The city does not pay for these. In addition, there are franchise fees. We are limited in those, but the city does charge franchise fees when applicants want to co-locate on our facilities. So there are application fees, both for conditional use permits and right-of-way permits. There are also franchise fees that will be charged. For any upgrades, also the applicants will be responsible for upgrading their own technology. The city does not do that. If the applicant needs to install a different pole because of structural needs for their equipment, they would be responsible for anything like that. There were a couple of questions about safety notices and 5G technology, and specifically, I'm going to leave those for the expert here, as well as the question about rollout timing. I do want to cover the health questions as best as I can.
Before you get to that, could I ask one more question? It was a couple back. I just
Yes.
wasn't sure if you were going to hit it on its own. Is there any means to require companies to share equipment? I do worry that with the frequency of how closely these do need to be spaced, if we have 4 cell providers that are each providing it, it literally could be every 2 houses to actually get the spacing they need. Is there a way to make them use the same equipment, or is that even possible?
I don't believe there's a way for us to require it. Although as part of the conditional use permit process, we can require the companies to show us that nothing is existing and available. So we can move in that direction. I think the most power with the conditional use permit we're going to get is one about neighborhood character. So if a company comes in and wants to install on every house on a block, we're going to be able to say that this is disruptive to the character of the neighborhood aesthetically. I think in this case, and I'll get to that, that's our most powerful argument, unfortunately.
Is there the potential to have multiple carriers on the same pole?
Potentially, it's all related to structure.
Okay.
And I suppose the technology. I don't know how the technology interacts with each other. So moving to some of the health concerns. We are very limited on what we can do to limit this technology. I am very sympathetic to all of the concerns mentioned here, but the legislature has essentially tied cities' hands. They've said that we have to allow this technology in the right-of-way in our communities. And the federal government has set the health regulations regarding it. We cannot put in stricter laws than exist. That's just a fact. And so if cities want to limit this, we need to talk to the legislature. This law that was put in place in 2017 is something that cities, the League of Minnesota Cities, we all fought to maintain our control over this, and we did not win. So our hands are tied. Again, I'm sympathetic. There isn't a lot of research. The research that's there is from 1997 from the FCC. It is. But those are the rules that we're playing by.
Well, doesn't it say in the summary here that they also must not negatively impact public health and safety or interfere with government facilities?
It does, and the federal government has said that it doesn't. If it meets these limits.
So we have no purview over challenging that?
We do not.
This commission has no purview over challenging that?
That's correct.
But we do have discretion using, they said another power, or the only power we have is the conditional use permit, using that. The state gave us that power, right? So how can we have discretion in how we apply the conditional use permit to decide if it's proper?
That's correct, but you can't use your authority for conditional use permits to make decisions that are counter to the federal government.
What do they allow us to do? How would that?
Essentially, you can decide that if someone would want to put up poles so frequently that it would disrupt the neighborhood character, you could say something like that.
Well,
but
don't you think that this has the potential to opening Pandora's box with, we allow AT&T to do this, and next we've got Verizon going on the same pole, and then all the others? Isn't this setting a precedent that, maybe might not be so good?
I'm not saying
I'm just
anything
saying,
about the health impacts of this.
I'm not
I
talking
can't.
the
What
health
I'm telling you is the parameters surrounding your decision.
So I guess one of the things that I was thinking about is that if AT&T, they've now applied, and then let's say Verizon applies next month and they would like to have poles in the middle of the same exact blocks that AT&T has decided that they wanted their poles, then as Melissa was saying, that would affect the character of the neighborhood. So I mean, I guess there is the ability or the choice for for folks to say that these poles would change the character of the neighborhood. But I mean, what I would say, and my understanding of this is that it was a bipartisan vote at the state that has kind of tied the hands of cities. So there's a little bit of work that needs to be done at the state. So that is my understanding of it. And at the federal level, they have tied the hands of cities to make changes, and it's based on 1997 data.
Commissioner Holberg, I do want to mention that we do have Andrew Biggerstaff here from Kennedy and Graven, the city attorney's office. If there are specific questions as well, we asked him to come and help us to understand what we can do in terms of these health concerns and what we can't.
To that end, would it be possible to limit the proximity to known residents who have the electromagnetic sensitivity?
Commission, good evening. As Melissa pointed out, my name is Andrew Biggerstaff. I'm an attorney with Kennedy and Graven, the city's legal counsel. Just a step back, I think big picture, maybe to provide a little more context, I think Melissa gave a great overview of kind of how we got here and maybe to the benefit of some of those in the public. The way that this is all structured, and I think it gets at the heart of a lot of these questions, is that the state has decided, the state legislature has decided that small wireless facilities, these poles, are a permitted use throughout the city, which means that they don't need city approval. They don't have to come before the planning commission or the city council before they're constructed. The exception to that is in residential or historic areas. In those areas, the city has a choice whether or not to require a conditional use permit. This city has decided that they will require a conditional use permit. So in this very limited instance, we have some authority to review and ultimately approve or deny these requests. When you look at the requirements in the code, it lists things like the use can't have a negative impact on public health and things like that. And I think the point that Melissa's making is that all of the data that we've relied on in making our recommendation is from the federal government. And in order for the city to make a decision that would be justifiable, we would have to have some firm data that showed why that information was wrong, why we can't rely on the information that we have. The city's ability otherwise to deny a conditional use permit is relatively limited. And I think it would also just be helpful to I guess as a reminder, the question before you and ultimately the city council is a land use question. Is this pole acceptable here? Does it meet the criteria in our code? And if it does, then generally the action would be for approval, or the recommendation would be for approval. And I think that's where we've gotten. Again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a health expert, so I can't speak to any of the health concerns or things like that. But based on my understanding and my knowledge and working in other communities, is that generally the available data is at best inconclusive that 5G or any of these things is sure to cause harm or something like that. I'm not aware of any community in the state since this law was passed that has denied a conditional use permit, for instance, based on those concerns. One of the other questions came up about co-location. There's some verbiage in the statute which prohibits the city from requiring utilities to co-locate on the same structure. These get into some pretty technical rules, so we'd have to kind of go back to the drawing board to answer some of those questions. But that's all kind of by way of background a little bit. Hopefully that provides a little more sort of big picture view on how we got to where we got. And I'm sorry, I forgot the specific question.
Well, my specific question is, and again, like you had indicated, at best the data is, not specific, or, the reliability could be questionable. My question specifically is, could Richfield legally mandate that there be a buffer zone for residents that have electromagnetic sensitivities to not have poles in a proximity? I don't know what the range would be, but is that something that we could do? Obviously, it seems like the general health concerns, we can't bar these from happening, but something like that might be a compromise for those subject residents.
Yeah, I think I think that generally speaking, when it comes to conditional use permits, the city has the authority to impose reasonable conditions. What reasonable conditions are a case-by-case analysis or decision. To me, that would be something that's reasonable, but then I think you have to get into the conversation of how do we prove that? What do we require from individuals?
Right.
What's a reasonable distance? I don't know those answers off the top of my head. That would be something we'd have to kind of consider. And we'd also, I think, have to balance that against the industry's need to have these poles where they're proposing them. Presumably, they're proposing them in the locations they need them. If we're going to require these buffer zones, that may negatively impact that. But I think that's a.
I mean,
a
I'm
fair
just
question.
suggesting it may be an option. I'm not
Right.
suggesting that's the way we go. I just don't, from the conversations we've had, it seems that our hands are somewhat tied in this, but I'm looking for some ways to find compromise with the concerns we've heard tonight.
Right, and again, I think that for individuals with documented or the ability to sort of show that these are a tangible harm, to me, that sort of crosses into the reasonable condition category, and that's something that we could certainly consider moving forward.
Okay, and the other option I was considering is, I think someone in the audience had mentioned if there was a label or there was some sort of warning on the pole that there was additional electromagnetic activity or whatever it would be. I don't know if that's something that would be easily addressed.
Yeah, and certainly I think I would defer to the industry experts on. I'm not an expert on FCC. Right, what they require for labels. I know on some of the studies that they commissioned, the recommendation was that no additional signage be necessary. I don't know if that's based on what the FCC requires or that consultant's determination that the radiation didn't reach a certain level, but certainly that I think that could be another area of conversation.
Okay.
I have a quick question, and Melissa addressed this pretty well, and I think this might be one that would be to the AT&T staff, but just to get the legal perspective on it. So, because this is the first time that this has come before the Planning Commission, what are the chances, and not that you would be able to say this, but like how likely is it that legally this would just continue to come before us from different providers? Because I know providers share cell towers, and that's a technical question I don't understand, but how likely would it be that it would just like different providers would keep coming and we would have no recourse?
Well, and I think Melissa hit the nail on the head, at least partly, and I agree. I don't know how the technology works together. Part of the legislative change that occurred was because this is a new technology. Small cell distributed antenna systems are new. It's not the large cell phone towers of yesteryear that we deal with anymore. So I think there's certainly an economic consideration for the companies. If they can co-locate, then it may make sense for them to co-locate. The other consideration, I think, it's outside of the scope of the CUP approval, but there's also some authority for the city to require location agreements with these providers, and that's something that's generally handled at a public works level. It's usually where you cover the fees and things like that, and so that may be another avenue. In the case where they wanted to co-locate, they wouldn't need a conditional use permit to put up a new pole because they're going to put their stuff on an existing pole, so they might just go through that process. So in that case, it wouldn't come back to the Planning Commission. They'd go right to the permitting process.
Okay, thank you. Would this be an appropriate time for us to ask the staff from AT&T to come and answer some questions?
I have one more question for staff. So I want to understand the authority we do have, and that is sounds like the only thing we could use is the neighborhood character down the line, if more companies want to be erect their pole, devices, is that the only ground we could stand on, is that it disrupts neighborhood character? Or do we have any other latitude in that?
Well, sort of getting back to what Andrew's talking about with reasonable conditions, I think I would argue that putting one of these in front of every house in a residential neighborhood is very disruptive to a neighborhood's character. And so I think that would be a reasonable condition to make them spread out a certain distance. Yes, that I think you would be able to do that if these continued to come forward. In this particular instance, when they're going on or replacing existing poles, I think that's a difficult argument to make.
I'm kind of looking ahead here, and
yes.
Where is that reasonable conditions language? Where is that? Where are you pulling that from?
Just generally speaking, with conditional use permits, the city has the authority under state law to impose reasonable conditions. I'll also just point out, and we've talked about this, but we haven't specifically cited to it, when the city council adopted the conditional use permit for these poles in the city's code, they did list out some of the conditions that should be considered. So the health and no interference with government function and things like that. Those are specific conditions in the code to consider. But as we've talked about, it's not that a decision can't be based on that, but if a decision were to be based on that, it would need to be supported by research or something along those lines.
Could you give that to staff? That would be great. And then generally, we would just have to have that submitted beforehand, but thank you.
Could I ask one more thing of staff? So, Melissa, the neighborhood character one, is that condition 2 of the CUP, or what are you referring to when you say that? Or
let me read here quickly.
Okay.
Could you repeat your question?
So,
I was asking when she says neighborhood character condition, I'm curious what that specific language isn't used, so I'm just not curious which criterion she's referring to.
Right. So if you're looking at code requirements and required findings, number 2, the proposed use is consistent with the purposes of the zoning code, the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use. So the purpose of the zoning code is to protect and promote public health, safety, comfort, aesthetics, economic viability, and general welfare. The comfort, aesthetics, that is generally where we use neighborhood character. Okay. That is generally where that comes up.
So given the sort of direction of the conversation here, would it be possible to include language that says, because there are no existing poles, there is not an excessive concentration of existing towers, that this is reasonable? Because it
to specifically include that in the language of the resolution.
Part of our finding of why this is reasonable is because there aren't 1,000 of these on this block already.
Yes, absolutely. I
guess
think
I
you
just,
could
because I thought
modify
that's
the
been present in
resolution.
our conversation, so I'd like to see that.
Yes.
Okay, if we could have the staff from AT&T please come to the podium, that would be great. And just state your names and write them on the pad there. Thank you.
Certainly. Madam Chair, my name is Valerie Brugman. I'm Director of External Legislative Affairs for AT&T, 901 Marquette Avenue in Minneapolis. And I'm joined tonight by Josh Conway from SAC Wireless, who is our vendor that works with the applications for the staff, and he's located here and can give his address in Bloomington. Thank you for the opportunity, Commissioners. I'm excited. My company wants to invest into your community to help your constituents and help serve our customers. This is an advancement in the existing network that we have now. Data services and how people are utilizing the technologies that are at hand. This goes beyond just cell phones. It's tablets, it's wearables, it's medical devices, it's smart city application. There's a whole host of equipment that now runs over a wireless network. What we want to do is invest and to provide better services within your community. Small cell facilities, some people have been saying, getting it confused with that. It's going to be 5G, the next thing. And these small cell facilities will help the existing network. So the existing phones and devices that individuals have, it helps optimize our network and provides better services. There was a mention of internet and high-speed internet and broadband coverage. All of this that we do within our network helps advance the services that we're providing. So if there's areas that there's drop calls or people can't get internet or connect to their wireless device to access the internet, these investments would be doing it. We've been investing, we've invested in Minnesota since 2010 over $1 billion, and we'll continue to bring that investment into the communities. We did work in 2017 to successfully work with the legislature on passing a small cell bill. Any good piece of legislation, no one party walks away completely happy. And we worked very closely with the League of Minnesota Cities, the other providers, the legislature staff, in crafting good public policy. We are ahead of most states in doing so, and what that means is then those dollars will come into the state of Minnesota. We've been building out within the Twin Cities, St. Paul, Minneapolis, St. Louis Park, Woodbury, Eden Prairie. We just continue to go into these communities. Question come up about other carriers. I can't say what other carriers want to do. I work for a company that we're choosing to invest into this community to help advance our network and really bring forth the next generation, the 5G evolution. It's a continuum. People mentioned about, autonomous cars. We're just seeing it go over. I've been with the company 20 years, and I started in the landline. I would never think, when I see the numbers of the data that's transmitted over our network, people doing live streaming. So we're here not just to place things into the neighborhood, but we're really here to bring a service that our customers and your constituents are asking for. They're buying very expensive devices, and these devices aren't working, and that be the cell phones or the new cars. Again, it just goes to continue on. AT&T was fortunate enough to obtain the agreement to provide FirstNet and build out the first responder network, so this will also enhance police and fire capabilities and what they're able to do. So I can bring up Josh if you need to. He's more on the technical end that's been working with staff in the application process. I think the one question that came up was with the identification tabs. We are required to do that. And maybe the best point I can say is right now, AT&T has been working within the right-of-ways for over 100 years as a company. We have over 1,500 employees that call Minnesota home. We put our customers, our workers, and residents' safety first. So we have gone through and work in partnership. But the FCC, the American Cancer Society, have come out with studies that showing that there's no correlation to some of the RF frequencies that these small cell wireless facilities transmit have any ill effects. But again, can anybody be 100% sure? I think that's evident in any new technology as you go through to see, microwave ovens and the issues that those might have caused early on. I think the other question was with co-locate. We cannot co-locate on have another provider on the same location. It interrupts the frequencies within our network and their network. And also it's a more of a safety hazard with the structure, the pole structure. So if you put on equipment from both providers, we're all using the very similar equipment, it would be a structural issue that I don't think a staff review it, the engineers review it, they would want to have something like that. We come to you to look at city-owned assets as well as XL poles because, our employees are residents too, and we don't want cluttered up right-of-ways and poles every 10 feet. But the fact remains we are trying to fill pockets within our network and bring and optimize our network and bring the services down faster so people get faster speeds, better connectivity to the multiple devices that they might have within their home. I think that's it. I don't know if you need anything from SAC Wireless or if I reviewed enough for you.
Commissioner Hoberg, I just had a couple questions. So I was just curious, you mentioned you're required to do some sort of like ID tag, like what is that tag in particular?
Josh, do you have the? Yeah, I got a picture right here. I don't know if we can pop it up or.
Yep, if you lay it on the table there by the lower screen, our technician will zoom in on it. Just a second. Okay. Yep, if you, okay. Which, yeah, if you could turn it and maybe point to what you're showing us.
All the RF signs, they're going to be placed on poles.
How big are those signs?
They have dimensions on there.
I can't read that.
Could you tell us what they are? They're too small to read.
There's some are 6 inches, 8 inches,
Okay.
2.5, 15.
And mostly these are up by the receiver, I'm assuming.
They're going to be hard to see as they are.
Right.
They're going to be up there, so you're not going to be able to read them.
Right. Okay, I'm just curious about that. And then I think I had one other question. One other question about the range of the transmitters on each of these poles. I mean, is this just like a 1 block radius thing, or you think these go? Is it typically about a block? Okay. All right.
Right, so we have to look at, and also how the location, we're very specific into where we're wanting these because we have RF engineers that sit and develop the network and have to make sure that those polygons are within an area. So, but if we have disruptors like large trees or, buildings where those waves can't get transmitted, then we'd be looking for the best location to optimize that location as well as who we're serving.
Okay, thank you.
So were you, I have a question about, were AT&T customers the ones that kind of contacted your company to say this is a gap that we're seeing in this area?
Madam Chair, it's a combination. We have individuals that, yes, do call our company and they're upset customers because they purchase a $700 iPhone and then it's dropping calls or it's not downloading at the speeds that they had hoped, or tablets or whatever it may be, or wearables. So we utilize that data. We also do our own self-drive tests to see where there are areas and gaps in the services. And then we have a team of engineers that just monitor the network 24/7 to see where there's deficiencies. And I think as we build out, this is taking the macro sites, those large towers. This is in addition to, we can't plop up any more large towers anywhere. When I talk the macro, the 300 feet large ones that you see on the highway. So this is bringing the network closer to the individuals or where they reside, which is why we have to have them in the neighborhoods or in, the downtown areas where we have a lot of foot traffic of individuals.
So what is AT&T's plan to build out their 5G network here as far as adding more towers? Obviously, this is a very small amount of small cell.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Actually, that was another point that someone said, what's the rollout? Unlike, if I may use like Comcast as an example, where you have the daisy chain of you have to plop in, tear up neighborhoods and go through, we're able to select various locations, and our rollout will continue. We want to invest in communities, so we're going to, we're responsible to our shareholders, and we have a definite amount of capital that we can invest. So we're going to go into the communities that we can get into and put this investment in, and then also see how the network is responding to that. Are there other areas within the network? Can't say it's going to be 30, 40, 50. I don't know that yet. I'm working, as we look at our build plan, this is the plan today that we would like to bring forward to the city for approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I do have one more question. At what distance would another provider's interfere with yours? So if you potentially have 4, 5 on the same block.
I'll find out the exact number and what that is, and I don't really know if it's going to be, in a 2-block radius, 3-block, 4-block, not sure. I do know that as we worked, and I can give examples, City of Minneapolis, there might be some sites that AT&T is interested in deploying on, and Verizon has an application, so we have to look for an alternative site. So the city really does have control within that, where, if the applicant comes first, gets the approval, we need to look at alternative sites for that. As far as Sprint, T-Mobile, the other, I don't know what their plan is, and it's all proprietary, so we work with what we're doing today. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any further discussion they'd like to have?
I have a question now back to the city, and maybe we touched on this earlier, but is it my understanding that right now we don't have a plan or a schedule of how dense we would allow these poles to be? I mean, would we allow one every block, two on a block, three on a block, or is it just kind of right now we don't have any strategy?
Commissioner Laven, there are no distance separation requirements as part of the code. We don't have anything in place.
Okay.
I don't believe the legislature allowed us to put that in place.
Yeah, I'd have to look back, but I believe there's a restriction in the statute that prohibits cities from imposing separation requirements.
Okay.
Anything else? Commissioner Kwan?
Just for the attorney, it seems, we keep coming back to this a little bit, but it seems that, you know, other providers are going to come forward, and that's just going to happen, and we have to allow them the same access we allow AT&T because of the state law, but I think it might be hard to make that argument later about neighborhood character if we, you know, they're going to have a strong argument, I would think, saying other providers got this, so we have a right to it too. I just want to throw that out there and ask you your thought on that.
Yeah, I think, you know, when it comes to any land use request, I think the idea of precedent is always sort of at the forefront of your minds, and I think that's a good consideration. Again, kind of looking at it from a step back, the providers have been given by the state legislature the right to use the right of way. And again, anywhere else in the city, they have the permitted right. They don't need any sort of land use approval. It's only in these pockets, these residential areas, which in Richfield is probably more, you know, than other types of zoning districts. But the idea that, frankly, when you look at a conditional use permit, when you look at the next one from whichever provider might come next, you're going to be looking at that application, those, you know, the terms of what they're asking to do. And generally speaking, I wouldn't say that because you let so-and-so do it over there, you must let us do it here. I don't think that's a valid argument for any land use request. And so when you look at the next application that will come before you, because I'm sure there will be others, you're gonna have the opportunity to judge that based on the information available to you at that time. If new information comes out that there are health concerns and things like that, then that would be information you could rely on in making a decision about those requests. But I don't think that you necessarily have to worry that the next provider is going to rely solely on the argument that because AT&T was allowed to do it in these 5 or 6 places, they must be allowed to do it in the places they're asking to do it.
Commissioner Quam, just to tag off of that a little bit, this application also, remember, is for existing facilities. It's to place things or replace existing poles. So if another provider comes in and perhaps they're proposing a number of new poles, and again, we're talking about concentrations, that's a different scenario than what we're looking at tonight. So that might be something.
Commissioner Holberg. Yeah, I think in general, this seems like one of those things where all of this is purely informational only for us, and I'm glad to have this information. It seems like this is something where, yeah, our hands are tied, whether we agree with what's happening or not, whether we like our technology or not. But I highly encourage you to talk to your legislator and see how we can move this forward. It's worth still bringing up to council to have it on record that this is a priority for residents in general, if you are concerned about the rollout of this. But again, it's one of those things where it's this double-edged sword too. You know, like what's the technology that we want in our communities, or that most of the people want in the communities? You know, I think, and I'm not defending it at all. It's just we don't have the information that we feel like we need to make a good value judgment on this, and I think the state legislators need to see more information to make a good value judgment on this. I can't say anything else at this time. I mean, I just feel like we kind of have to say yes on this.
I think based on the discussion that we've had, which I've taken it all very seriously, I haven't really done a lot of research on it. And, every time I type anything into the internet, I'm like, well, here's another sign of me, like literally not caring who has my information or any of that. But, like you were saying, I do feel like that they have put cities in a situation where it's like, this is what we are going to be doing. And, you can sign off on it or not. And here's the formalities we're going through. That's what it feels like to me. I do know, like you were saying, there are a lot of people who do want this technology in the city and are very excited for it. That said, I liked what Commissioner O'Leary talked about, is that in whatever sort of resolution we passed today, or not resolution, but motion that we passed today, has the contingency that this is just based upon the number that we currently have, and that moving forward, that would be something that I don't know, you phrased it better than I am saying it right now, so maybe you could rephrase that.
Yeah, maybe when
Or
we
your
get into the motions,
statement.
I can rephrase
Yeah,
that. But
definitely.
Yeah.
Is it possible, is it possible to attach, I know we're a recommending body, and I know that we will, we'll have a motion shortly, but is it possible to, in addition to that motion, relay suggestions to city council or a rider to the motion that, I still want to go back to the folks that talked about the health issues with the electromagnetic sensitivities, that if there's a way to define what those may be and restrict development of these poles in those areas for those citizens. I get what the state does, and I guess what we have to do. But I think Richfield can respond to their citizens, and I think we have an obligation to try and accommodate some of those, especially if it's health related, in any way we possibly can. And I'm not sure what the exact language needs to be, and I'm not sure what the exact definition needs to be, and it's probably not going to be resolved tonight. But I think that this body could, if we, in some mechanism, related the city council that we had these citizens speak, and there was concerns that were brought up that if current language allows it to be addressed, we would recommend that we would follow down that path or respond to the citizens and try and create some sort of buffer, I think, for that.
Commissioner Lavin, I think that this is certainly something we can continue to study and look into, and talk with our legal counsel about what kind of conditions we could put into this. As Andrew said, that this does seem reasonable. However, there would have to be some sort of process that goes along with this,
Right.
and some distance established.
Yeah.
And we are on a clock here, a legal clock, based on the completeness of the applications. And I don't think that those additional conditions are something that we're going to be able to adopt this time. But moving forward, yes, we can communicate to the council that the Planning Commission recommends we continue to study this.
Right.
And look into that. Yes.
Okay.
Is that meaning that the city council would continue to study exceptions for people who could have documented health concerns? Is that what you meant? Continue to study? Is that what you were talking about?
Yes. Continue to study the issue of the documented health concerns, what a safe radius might be, what kind of documentation might be required. There are obviously privacy laws that we don't, all sorts of things that we need to talk to legal counsel about.
Right.
But yes, we can communicate that to the council, that you'd like staff to continue to look into that, and we can commit to doing that.
I would like that brought to the council.
Yes.
What does the timeline look like? I know we are on a timeline. Every application has a timeline. Does this have the opportunity to, say, maybe be pushed a little bit to get some of these additional questions answered?
Commissioner Rudolph,
It does say in the critical timing issues that we have in the notes, it's the 60-day clock started when a complete application was received on July 12th, 2019. A decision is required by September 10th, 2019, or the council must notify that the applicant that it is extending the deadline up to a maximum of 60 additional or 120 days total.
So it sounds like we've got time.
And it does say that the council's consideration has been tentatively scheduled for August 13th.
Just 1 second, commissioners. We're making sure that that additional 60 days actually applies in this case. It generally does the land use approvals, but there were a lot of things that were preempted as part of this legislation.
Commissioner Holberg.
Yes.
Never mind. I'll wait till the answer.
Okay.
Commissioners, we're working under two timelines. There's a timeline for the conditional use permit, and then there's also a timeline for the permits that are in with Public Works. The permits that are in with Public Works are 90 days. So in terms of delay, are you asking that you would make a recommendation today, but we would not take this to the council until later?
I mean, my thought, I would like to open it up to see if there are any commissioners right now who would like to make a motion and then vote on that. And then and let me know if this doesn't work. And then if there needs to be a delay based on gathering more information, it does sound like we are looking at information from 1997. So I don't know that another 60 days will give us like a lot more information to go on based on the way the state has this set up. But I mean, so that's just my thoughts on it.
My intent was Commissioner Lavin and Commissioner Quam had questions of direction on a few things that could not be answered today, to see if we can have the opportunity for those things to get answered.
Well, it's my understanding, though, that these things can't be extended under council, or sorry, under planning commission. It has to be under council in general. Like, they're the only ones who can decide to extend that clock anyway, right?
That is correct. The council can extend the clock. I do want to say, realistically, I don't think that we can research and adopt a policy, even if this is extended to the full amount of days allowed, because not only does the initial research have to be done, including, again, with our legal staff, but then we have to craft a policy, have the council review the policy, have you review the policy, get public input on that policy. I don't think that this is something that can be done in this timeline, this legal timeline.
And it's my understanding, I don't believe that any of the proposed installations directly impact anyone that spoke tonight, but more or less a general concern of maybe future installations, the volume and proximity. Is that, I think I have that right. So to your point, you know, this specific application, you know, I don't know if it should be delayed, but more or less, I think that the communication of a policy or some language or some conversation on how to address this going forward, since I think everyone agrees that this might not be the last time we see a similar application, might be worthy of some effort.
Commissioner Lavin, I completely agree with that. I think we should continue to look at this. But in terms of this application, I don't see us being able to adopt something within this time frame.
All right, do we have any more discussion we would like to have on this? All right. Anyone? Or any commissioners? Oh,
Sure. It seems, the biggest concern is health, though that wasn't the only one, but our hands are tied if the FCC, whether they are right or wrong, says that's an acceptable level. That's all we can go by. We don't have, that's my understanding. Doesn't matter how many people disagree, the law is going to be based on the FCC's established guidelines for human exposure. The only maybe latitude we have is what Commissioner Lavin said about trying to make exceptions in their health conditions. So just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a commissioner who would like to make a motion?
Yeah, I just got a comment. I know this isn't a huge amount, but I've been working in technology for 25 years now. This seems like it will be opening up a Pandora's box to, I guess, the character of our neighborhoods. As much as I am wired in technology-wise, I'm kind of torn on this one.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that gets to the density issue, right? That gets to the proximity issue, and I think that Commissioner O'Leary, the language that you put in says, the approval tonight or the motion tonight or the action tonight would be based on the current proximity or the current amount of polls. But certainly I think that would need to be a factor for any additional applications going forward, because I agree with you. This is probably going to be something we see more frequently.
I think once the first one goes in, you don't have the legal standing for all four other telecoms to do the same thing every block,
and just like
every
the
other
city,
pole.
just like we'd like the city to consider, proximity for health issues, maybe they look for an overall direction or guidance on what they would see for an overall saturation of these. And I know that maybe there's, there's probably precedents that I don't know how much authority we would have, but in our conditional use permit, maybe there's some language that we could lean on. If it gets to the point where we're having these on every block, and I'm not sure that would be the case, but if we ever get to even a section in our city where it seems to be there's a concentration, it would be nice to have that direction.
I think that's what staff said, that our most powerful argument at that point would be the neighborhood character, disrupting that. Sounds like that's the only legs we'd have to stand on then.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion. Obviously, the chair could continue discussion after a motion is seconded.
Okay.
But I want to move the staff recommendation with a change to the required findings number 2 to add additional language that we do not find it counter to the aesthetics protected by the comp plan because there is not currently an excessive concentration of small cell towers in those locations. And I would trust staff to figure out exactly in what sentence that should go in, but something to that effect.
I would second that motion.
All right, let's have a little bit of discussion.
All right, I'd like to request you repeat the motion. It's long.
So, staff recommendation with a change to conditional use permits findings number 2, saying that we do not find it counter to those aesthetics protected by the comprehensive plan because there's not currently an excessive concentration of small cell towers in these locations. And I did want to say in response to Commissioner Rudolph's concerns, there are a number of things that we do use language like that. There was a thing about a car dealership proposed on 494, and staff's opinion and this commission's opinion was that it was excessive because there was already a concentration of car dealerships along 494. The council happened to disagree with that, but that thought process exists, and that's something we've done in the past. And I would hope if that became the case here, we would do the same here.
So then would the concern for health or the eventual study that we'd like to have done, or at least maybe the proposed language sometime in the future, be kind of a sidebar to this motion, or just an informal kind of communication back to the council that was discussed and was And I'm not sure if everyone agrees, but at least maybe, from my point of view, something that I would like considered.
Right, Commissioner Levin, that will be reflected in the minutes. It will
Okay.
also be added to the report that's provided to the council, the specific summary of what happened here. We can include it in the executive summary. And then also, we at a staff level have committed to working on that. We'll look at scheduling a study session with the council once we've done some background research.
Okay. So that at some point it will circle back, and if it's, for whatever, whatever is decided, the next logical step is, we would at least be, it's not going to fall into the meeting minutes and go away, but there'll be a circle back on it.
Right, it will
Okay.
be in the meeting minutes, it will be discussed with the council.
Okay.
And staff has marching orders.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
I just wanted to add that this is one of those things that I've thought about peripherally, and I do live in the area where a fair number of these towers are being clustered. So it does make me think, and I would like to encourage people who are here together. It's very important that it doesn't just come from the planning commission or staff, that this is an issue that needs to be talked about at city council. People in this room need to talk to each other, give information as a group to the city council and to staff, not as as individuals, but it is very helpful when people are working together within the community to organize around the issue and then assist in presenting the information, because I do think it's very important. And I agree to use that at the state as well. Like, I don't think, there's a lot of people that mock the things that folks are talking about when they have concerns about this kind of energy, and so I just feel like it's a good idea for people to start talking about it more and to bring it, do some advocacy. So I appreciate it. Thank you for being here.
Chair Hobart?
Yeah.
Could I clarify for a moment?
Yeah.
I want to clarify what staff was committing to. Staff was committing to looking at potential buffering for people who may be specifically sensitive to this type of energy.
Yep.
We are not committing to doing our own research on the health impacts of this. We are not qualified to do that type of research, to make those decisions. So I just wanted to clarify that we at a staff level cannot say
Right.
that something is healthy or not.
Right. I did hear you say that there's potential for a study session.
Yes, there
On
is
this issue?
potential for a study session to continue to discuss this, but again, we would likely be discussing buffering requirements, what kind of policy we could put in place in regard to documentation, spacing, things like that, as opposed to staff deciding or the city council deciding that FCC research is.
Yeah, and I think I didn't mean to imply that, but I think we're clear that it's been decided by the FCC. So this is
okay.
kind of,
I just wanted to
totally
clarify
understand
what we
that.
were
Sorry
looking
if
into
I
and what we weren't.
misconstrued that at
Okay.
all. So, all right. So we had a second. Are we ready to make a vote? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Was the motion seconded? Just to clarify.
Commissioner Penn seconded.
Okay,
it.
thank you.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right. The motion passes. All right. So thank you for everybody that came and spoke. We will be moving, and thank you staff for helping us through this issue. It was the first time. I appreciate it. The next thing we have on the agenda are our liaison reports. The first report up is our Community Services Advisory Commission. Commissioner Penn.
So looks like, sorry, like I said, I can't make it to the meetings typically. So just working out the agenda items and last month's minutes. And Commissioner Rudolph, please chime in whenever you feel I'm doing wrong, since your wife is on the commission, correct?
She is.
Okay.
But
all
I
right.
do not always get
You guys don't,
updates
you
from
guys
her.
don't keep up to
No.
date on this? Okay. Either way, so it sounds like there's a couple playground projects that are looking for renovation. There's one action item that's up for, that was just up for the July meeting, and that was the Taft Park, I believe. Recommendations, Nicollet Park and Jefferson Park. Some revisions to the playground and everything else that was happening around there, but it's mostly around recreational play facilities. And so there were budget items on that. I don't have recommendation on whether or not they were approved, but I'm assuming, it seems like since it was in the capital improvement budget that it was. But
All right. Thank you. City Council?
I think that's Chair Rosenberg.
correct.
All right. Let's move on to HRA.
Yes. In June, the HRA approved revisions to the first-time homebuyer program guidelines, including some additional funds available to these homebuyers, and also opening the program to non-renters, although they would not receive as much financial help as Richfield renters of 6 months or more. So some revisions to that program.
All right, thank you. Richfield School Board.
So in June, the school board had a mixed work session with the city council. I didn't get to attend that. They also then in their regular meeting, they gave a nice update on the progress of all the construction going on at the schools, which is an amazing amount of work they're doing.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Thank you.
Commissioner Rudolph, quick question. I know that there was, with the rains, there was some flooding in the basement. Did you hear anything about that? I know that a lot of maybe the senior night party stuff got inundated, but I'm not sure if there was, what the total damage was.
I was just looking at the minutes and I replayed some of the things. I did not hear what happened there.
I was just interested because there was some emails and I'm not sure what the total impact of that is, and I'm not sure how exactly it happened, but it was in the main building. Okay.
Transportation Commission.
We didn't meet last month, but the month before, 65th Street was the main thing on the agenda, which I think has been confirmed that will be delayed 1 year, so 2021 for the entire project, as opposed to doing the section by the hub next year. So they still are taking into account feedback so far, but I think that public process will probably restart in about a year to sort of finish that out. The Nicollet Avenue restripe and repaving will still be happening in 2020, I believe. So that'll extend the bike lanes from where they dead end in Minneapolis down to 66th, and also fix the pavement condition there. Glendale is proceeding, as you guys have probably seen, so that will, I think it's still supposed to be done this fall. And then the other transportation-related thing is that Richfield Bike Advocates and our mayor will be doing a bike ride on 66th on August 18th on Sunday at 1 p.m. So we'll have information about that as the date approaches, but basically we'll be riding the new section of 66. We'll be talking about some different things that are going on in Richfield with the streets, with development, and so on, and then we'll end with coffee at local Ritz on the east end.
Great, thank you. Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, I had a conversation with Ann Schultz, who's the president of the Richfield Chamber, and a couple of items on her kind of the front burner were that I understand the LIHTC bonds have been submitted, or the application for the apartment or multifamily at 77th and Pillsbury. I'm not sure what the status of those are, and maybe council or maybe the city has an update. Melissa? Sorry.
I'm sorry, we were trying to save the minutes over here.
No, that's fine. There was Ann Schultz in the chamber brought up that the LIHTC bonds were submitted, the application for the Pillsbury and 77th Street multifamily project. I don't know if you have any update on those. I think that.
The MWF Richfield Flats project. Yes, the application was submitted. We won't hear anything until November on that.
So that's in the process. There was interesting that Hope Church, very preliminary, but exploring possibility of adding multifamily. They have a 6 acre lot, and on the south end, I think there was some again, just beginning conversation of what those might look like. I think mixed between affordable and market. But again, no plans, no funding or anything has been lined up, but may happen in the future. I relayed some of the items from our 494 joint session, and I think the one item that caught our attention was the potential for a sound barrier along 494. Obviously, the concerns there would be the signage that exists and the value of having that. If it's diminished, of course, there's no renderings or no one understands what if any of that would look like at this point. But it's something that she wasn't aware of that could possibly be an item in the future that she would want to be keyed into. So she thanked me for that. A couple events that are happening in conjunction with the chamber. The chamber, in conjunction with councilpersons Simon Troutman and Edward Garcina, will be hosting a Latino community breakfast. A tentative date is August 9th. And then I found this very interesting. The chamber, jointly partnered with other community partners, will be hosting a first back to school event, 8:15 at the band shell, where there will be giving away 1,000 backpacks of supplies. And that's something that they partnered with Hennepin County to do that. And then also, I believe, with Richfield Police to give away up to 30 bikes. Other community tables, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, youth events will be there as well. So it sounds like quite the event that's shaping up. Again, I think maybe spearheaded by the chamber, but also very, obviously a lot of community partners involved as well. So, and that's at the band shell, 8:15, August 15th. That's all I have.
Thank you. That's a lot.
Great job. We had a long conversation today. It was, or actually yesterday.
Great. Well, should we move to city planner reports?
Thank you. I did have an update on the comprehensive plan. Our comprehensive plan has finally made it through staff review. It has been blessed by by all of the staff members. It will now go to the Community Development Commission for a hearing, and then the board. So we're hopeful that this will be will have final approval in the next couple of months. Obviously, kind of in this limbo time, it's a little weird where it was this, but we're moving toward this, especially when the city council has adopted it. So hopefully that will all be settled here in the next couple of months. The only other thing I wanted to mention was the Urban Wildland half marathon this weekend. If you're not running, go out and cheer on all of the folks that will be running through the beautiful community of Richfield on the new course this year. So don't go to your old spot. Make sure you check the new route.
It's an amazing run. It's really a lot
It is.
of fun.
The run is.
I ran the half.
It's great fun. Yep.
Oh, well, great. Our next meeting time is Monday, August 26th at 7 in council chambers. And anything else, anyone? All right, does somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you, everybody. Good night.